Good morning, Chavirim. Masechet Pessachim, Amoud, yomi, Ayin Hey, 75 pages. The same Gemara for 2,000 years. So we're speaking about Korban Pesach. Korban Pesach, the halacha is that you have to roast it. You're not allowed to cook the Korban Pesach in water. It cannot be mebushan. Second thing you need to know is that you cannot put it on a spit of metal. And the Korban Pesach has to be roasted, yes? And when you are roasting it, like we were saying last week, that has to be roasted from the fire. What happens if you put it on a spit of metal? So you put it on the shish kebab is metal. What happens is the fire comes from the bottom, it heats up it roasts, of course, the outside of the animal. That's true, but it also heats up the metal on the sides that are protruding outside the animal, and that heats up. And cham miksato cham kulo. When the metal on the outside heats up, it actually is a conduit that makes the metal hot all in the inside, and then the inside is being cooked by the hot metal and not by the fire. So in our Mishnah, we said you have to roast it on a certain type of wood that's from pomegranate tree. That's the best type, like we learned last time. That's how you have to roast it on. And you cannot roast it, though, we said, on a grill, which is called an askala. So if you have an askala, which is grill, you cannot roast it on. Then, in the same Mishnah, what we said is that Rabban Gamliel told his slave, go roast it on the grill. So what the Gemara is going to ask a question right now. What is it? Are you allowed? The Mishnah said you're not allowed to. And then it said that actually there was a situation where they did roast it on the grill. So that's what we're holding on the third line of Ayin Hey. The Gemara says, Masechet isto. So what the Mishnah just did is it's giving a Masechet, a story, to contradict what we said at the beginning. You said don't roast it on metal, and then you're saying actually that you roasted on metal. So the story you're bringing is not a support. It is actually disproving what we said. So the Gemara says Chasure Mesira. But here are actually words, our Mishnah is missing words. Im askala menukevet mutar. If the grill has a hole in it, then it is mutar. And so that's why Rabban Gamliel went and told him to a slave to burn it, to roast it on a grill. How do you say? What do you read? Perforated grill. And then basically Rashi explains what's happening over here is that there's two ways of having a grill, and it's not resting on the grill. So there's a hole. There is a grill which is basically holding the spit. That's what it seems to be. And the grill is holding these. How are you going to hold it? You can hold the two people, right? You'll hold one side and I'll hold one side. And you're holding the spit and I'm holding the other side. And the animal is being roasted. Or you could get a grill. But if you put the grill and it's just, a lot of bars in the grill, it's like a ladder. You're going to put it down. It's going to be heating up from the middle of the grill. So if you have a hole in the middle, so we have these sort of pegs over here, this grill that's holding the spit, and then it's going down in the fire, but it's not touching the fire, not touching it all. So basically it stays out the same anacha. It cannot be resting on anything metal. It cannot be using metal, but the wood can be resting on the metal if it's not touching the metal, and then it's roasted from the fire and not from anything else. By mine Rav Chinana bar Aide. Mirav Ada. So Rav Chinana asked Rav Aide Barada, Mirav Ada Baraba, he asked the following question. Tanu shisiko biklipe orla. So remember, I don't know if you remember, we learned in Daf Lamed Chavav a long time ago, already 50 pages back, we learned that there is what's called orla. Orla is the first 3 years of any fruit, of any tree, that it's not allowed to be used. It is off limit, it is asur b'hana'ah. So what about if a person lit up an oven? So we said before that if you have firewood of an orla, or if you have klipot of an orla, and you burn the klipot, is that asur b'hana'ah? And you make a bread, you make a barbecue with that. Is that asur? Because what is the isur? It's the wood isur. You can't eat this klipot. You can't eat the fruit. You can't eat the pomegranate. The pomegranate has shells. Pomegranate shells actually, what's it called? It's you can burn it. There's combustible. I'm losing my English. It's combustible, so therefore you can actually use it as fuel. Now, what about if you use it as a fuel and it's going to cook some food? Did you now use orla or you didn't use orla? Well, there's two ways of looking at it. Really, there was fuel and now it turned into fire. So the fire is not orla. So therefore, it has has no consequence on the food that you cooked. Or the fire is an extension of the wood. So if the fire is an extension of wood, so it's a sur as well. So the Gemara is asking, Tanushi siko b'kiplei orla. So now you lit up a fire with klipim of orla. V'gafu. But then what you did is you took out the coals. You took out all the coals, and therefore it's just still hot, and it could still cook, and it's going to cook. But now with the klipim, there's no more klipot over there. All there is the heat that was left, inside that was captured inside the oven. V'afabo etapat. Didivrei oser. Mao. So according to the one who said it's mutter anyways, for sure it's mutter. But according to the one who said it's asur, what will we say in this case? God, you want a Gemara? Amarle apat muteret. Answers, the bread is mutter. So the bread is mutter. So we do not see the heat. You want another Gemara? We do not consider the heat of a fire that was from coals, that were from orla, when it's been completely removed and there is no more fire, and there is no more klipot, we do not consider that to be an extension of the orla. Do you understand? You got it? So far so good? Mr. Buzo? Compris?
Yeah.
The Gemara says, Amar Rab Chinana. One second, problem with that is Rab Chinana Saba, Amar Rabasi, Amar Rab Yochanan, Tanu Shisiko V'garfo. But the same exact thing is if you want to have it tzli esh. So you have your fire, okay, and you have an oven, and you're not putting it on racks, but you heated it up and you took out the fire, and now you put your korban pesach inside this hot oven, and it actually roasts from the leftover heat that's inside the oven. Is that called tzli esh, that has to be roasted on fire, korban pesach? It's not. And we know that Rabasi said in the it's not called tzli esh. And you know why? The Torah tells us in the two psukim, it's talking about tzli esh. The Torah tells you got to be tzli esh twice. Why does it tell us tzli esh twice? It tells you got to be roasted twice. It could have just told you once. To tell us twice, to tell us that in this very case it doesn't work. So the Gemara says, Tama di gali rachmana tzli esh shte pa'amim. Halo gali rachmana haba'amina tzli eshu. Since the Torah says for roasted on fire twice, that's why if it's not roasted from a real fire, it's not kosher. But if it would say tzli esh only once, that means if it roasted without a real fire, just a residue of fire, leftover heat from the fire, that would be kosher. So what do we see over here? That in fact, when you remove the fire, the heat that's still present in the oven is still considered technically fire if it wouldn't be for korban pesach to tell us this. So korban pesach is an exception to the rule. But with the odd exception rule, we consider it fire. And if it's considered fire, well, it's considered the extension of the klipot of the orla. So your orla bread, the bread should be orla bread.
Sorry, but in Shabbat, there's also like the same concept that you take out.
Well, Shabbat, the real isser is bishul. And you have what's called toldata esh. So if you cook something from an offshoot of fire, that's called bishul. But here we're not talking about bishul. We're looking on the outcome of the impact on the item. It cooked. Here is it called? We don't care how it cooked. It's cooking. If it changed, it's edible. It wasn't edible. That's called cooking. Here we want to know what cooked it. It's definitely called cooked, but was it cooked from orla or wasn't cooked from orla? What is it? How do we want to prove it? From korban pesach. Korban pesach, the very sixth thing is actually not called korban pesach. It's not called fire. You know why? Because it says twice. But if only say once, it would be a fire. So how do you answer that? So the Gemara says, very simple. That's where we learn it out. We learn out from Korban Pesach, since it says twice over there, that's why we don't consider it an extension of the fire. It's not considered fire, it's considered heat. So therefore, in Korban Pesach, we teach you the rule, and we apply that rule also to Torah. So therefore, that's why it's not asur. V'bait eima hatam tama. And another way of looking at it is that we could say it like this: hatam tama dichtav l'chamanat tzli esh shtei pa'amim. Halo ketav l'chamanat tzli esh shtei pa'amim avamina esh kapid rachmana v'afilu garfo namit tzli eshu. Yeah, it makes sense to say like this. Yes, the Torah says twice over there. That's why we want it to be really on fire. If it would only say once, we would say that even if you took away the coals, it would still be cooked and would still be kosher. So we're makpid on fire. Here, here, when it comes to the orla, the real isser is the firewood. And it doesn't exist. And the way I see it is like this. There is three things removed. To say that the firewood that turns into the fire, that the fire is still firewood, that's a chiddush. But once we remove the fire and to say the existing heat is still fire and it's still firewood, that's a very big stretch. So here with two steps removed. Whereas when it comes to the Korban Pesach, in theory, if it wouldn't be for the two psukim, we would be only one step removed. So heat is still fire, that we can accept. But we can't accept that heat is still fire, which is still wood. No, that's not true. We go one step removed. One step removed, firewood is fire. And fire is heat. And fire, when it's removed, is still fire, the heat of it. But you can't say that heat is firewood. So that's why it'll be mutar. Either way, we know that if a person did it with the klipot of the orla, it's allowed to eat. And this, if we cooked it in a hot oven, it's not korban pesach. The Gemara says, Tanu Rabbanan, Chatcho v'natno al gabei gechanim. So now you take your korban pesach, you cut it up a little bit in order that the blood should flow out a little bit easy, and you put it on coals. Directly on the coals. So what is that? Is that called being burnt on fire, or is not called being burnt on fire? Rabbi Amar Omer Ani shezet tztiyash. Yes, that's called fire. Coals is called fire. So far, so good. So therefore, it's still kosher if you put it on the coals. You can't put it on metal, but you put it on coals, that's kosher. Rami le Rabbi Achdevai. Rabbi Achdevai challenged. Barami le Rav Chisda. Mi amar Rabbi Gechanim esh. You want to say that Rabbi holds that coals are fire? Well, I'll tell you, Ninu. Ureminehu. Makot esh, mirvat esh. So we know that there's something which is called a baheret, a sa'et. It's different spiritual illnesses that translate in certain colors on the skin. Sometimes there's going to be a person with a certain burn. It's called michvet esh. There's a burn of fire. And then what happens is it starts to develop a certain color inside of it. And you got to call the Kohen. And maybe it's a mitzora, maybe it's not a mitzora, it's a set, it's a sapachat. All these are different halachot, very complicated. So now the Torah says michvet esh when it's talking about. You want to look at that pasuk together? Let's look at Gimel and Torah O. O basar ye be'oro michvat esh. So if you would have the skin that will have inside of it a burn of a fire. V'ayta michyat amirva beheret levana. And now when it's healing, it looks like a baheret, which is a different type of like mitzorah, and it is white. Adam demet, a little bit, or levana, a little bit white red, or it is completely white. Okay, so here it's talking about really a mirvet esh. Any eda shemirvet be'esh. This halacha is only applying. At first glance, we would say that it's only going to be chayiv if it's burnt with fire. Nirved begacheret. What about with coals? Beremetz. Remetz is hot ashes, if I'm not making a mistake. Besid, that is like lime, very hot liquid. Roteach. Begefasim, another type of liquid. Roteach. Bekoda barabaminao. Anything else that comes from fire. All these things are hot from fire. Coals, ashes, all these things are heated up from fire. We have another 5 minutes. Shalom bayit. By the shalom bayit. Natuye chameur. So how do we include even water that's heated with fire? How do we know that all these, even though the Torah says mirvadesh, Talmud Omar mirva riba. The Torah says mirva twice, the burn twice. So it says burn from fire twice. That's including all different types, including coals. Tama de Rabbi Rachmana mirva. Hello, Rabbi Rachmana mirva gechanim naveshninu. We see that this is only applicable to the matzorah, because the Torah says over there mirva twice. So when fire, it says mirve. Fire is not coals. Only in that specific situation it's coals. So why you tell me that korban pesach, you put it on coals, it's considered fire? Actually, there what we're talking about is a metal coal. It's a metal coal, meaning you heat up balls of fire, balls of metal. That's what it has to be, Rabbi. But a ball of wood, a piece of wood that turns into coal, you don't need a ribui to tell you that's fire. That is, of course, fire, because the fire is caught on it. There's a big difference. When you heat up metal, it doesn't catch on fire. It gets red, but it doesn't catch on fire. Wood catches on fire. It's combustible. So therefore, that's why you need a ribui for metal. You don't need a ribui for the wood. אמרני גרחדת של עץ לא יצטריך כד ריבויה, כי יצטריך כד גרחדת של מתכת. You only need it for fire. גחנים, very interesting now. Super. גחנדת של מתכת. וגרחדת של מתכת לה באשו. 1 second. You want to tell me, now based on this, that fire, that coals of metal are not called fire? I'll prove it to you is. V'gabe bat kohen. You know the bat kohen shezinta. There was let's say an engaged bat kohen. Her punishment is not a regular punishment of somebody who did znut. So a person who did znut is usually skila, if I'm not mistaken. Somebody who was eshet ish, who was a married woman, slept with another man, she gets what's called skila. But what does a person get if she's a bat kohen? If she's the daughter of a kohen, she's already holier level, she gets fire. And there the Torah says, ba'esh tisaref. The Torah tells us that her punishment is burning her in fire. V'amar madna, you know how it is burning in fire? Pitila shel ever hayu osina. It wasn't burning a person in fire. Anytime we say a death penalty of fire, we learn Masechet Sanhedrin together, God, if you remember, that it wasn't actually fire. It was actually a little like pitila, like a wick, which means just a long string of heated up lead, and we make her swallow it. Liquid lead that we give you the person to drink. L'chaim. Shanei hatan. They would actually say the mavet. Shanei ayu osina. Shanei hatan. So you see that's called tisaref be'esh. And since it says tisaref be'esh, we give it with lead. So what is it? It's fire? It's not fire. The Gemara says, Shanei hatan. Damakra be'esh tisaref. There the Torah says, Ba'esh tisaref. Why does it need to say tisaref? Tisaref nerabot kol srefot haba'ot mina esh. So therefore we see that, yes, in general, fire does not equate to metal that's heated up. However, when the Torah says, Ba'esh tisaref, it could have just said Ba'esh. If she is punishable, be'esh. Why does it say be'esh tisaref? Anything that burns. So we're taking the metal lead and we're this lead liquid lead, and we're putting it in her stomach, and she's going to die from that. The Gemara says, okay, b'kol sheken be'esh atzma. If lead is considered fire, fire is also considered fire. So why are we burning her this way? Burn her with a real fire. The Torah says tisaref be'esh. Okay, it also works, but why don't you just nakifla chavidiz murot? Take some vineyards, wrap her around them, set them on fire. V'nikre. That's called fire. That's for sure called fire. The Gemara says, Atya srefa sricha mibnei Aaron. Actually, because we have a gzera shava from the sons of Aaron that died in the Mishkan on Aleph Nisan. What they did is they brought an esh zara, and actually they died with two fires that came out of heaven, and it went into their nostrils and burned them inside. So their innards were burned and their bodies were intact. Since that's called srefa, so whenever we give the punishment of srefa, it's the same time. Well, we burn the inside and we don't burn the outside. Ma'le'anan srefat neshama b'guf kayam, avkan srefat neshama b'guf kayam. So therefore, the body's intact and the soul is burnt here too. And that's why we do it to anybody that's nidon b'srefa. The Gemara says, "V'navida nami chamiyahu." Okay, you want to burn the inside, so take heated bubbling water. Why? Boiling hot water. It's hard. That would be hard. Boiling hot water, worse than lead.
It's 100 degrees.
So the Gemara is saying, burn it with hot water. Why do you got to go get lead? The Gemara says, Mishum de Rav Nachman. You got to love another Jew. So what does that mean? How does that translate into killing a person who's chaya mita? Beror lo mita yafa. Choose the nicest out of two. Yes, we got to burn the insides. It's an easier, more respectful way to burn with lead, believe it or not. Because it seems to be it happens faster. And second, it doesn't ruin the skin. I read in the Mefarish. When you pour hot water into the person's, you just fill them up with hot burning water, it actually causes all kinds of bubbling on the skin. Whereas with the lead will kill instantaneously, it seems to be, and that's a nicer death penalty. So we have, by the way, the Beit Din, whenever they're giving death penalty, they have to choose the easiest one out of two. We're finished another 2 minutes. One second. We have Rav Nachman that we know that fire is we know that we have to choose the nicest death, and if burning is called a death, so give the nicest one. Why do you need a gzera shava to bnei Aaron? Just give that from the get-go. The Gemara says, so we need the gzera shava because without the gzera shava of bnei Aaron, you might not have known that when Torah says burn, it's called burning the inside. You might have thought it's burning the outside. So we need bnei Aaron to tell you to burn the inside. B'mishum de Rav Nachman, if you just choose Rav Nachman, that you got to choose the best type of punishment, the easiest one, nifu shlecha v'rizmurot tuva, ki echad tamut be'agla, kamashmanan. So therefore, if we just try to get the best death, actually, believe it or not, it would be much faster to burn the same person by racking them with a lot of zimurot and setting it on fire. Throwing a person into a whole fire, he'll die right faster than the lead in the stomach. The lead in the stomach might take a minute or two. The water might take a few minutes. The lead is better for the body. The fire is actually quicker. So that's why we need, that's v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. So no, you need two things. You got to burn the inside, and you got to burn the inside the easiest way. You know that Rabbi Akiva, when they burnt him, they wrapped him up. Huh? They wrapped him up and they put him. They soaked everything in water. So they soaked the linen that they wrapped him up, the wool that they wrapped him up in water, so it would be very slow. They did a very cruel death penalty to him. The Gemara says, "Kamash shemanan v'ede be'esh namani." So why do we need to say be'esh? We don't need the word be'esh. Just learn tisaref and bnei Aaron. So what do we need the word esh for? La puki ever mikaron. This I need a shot from you, Chaim. That's to exclude, to push aside that we can't take lead from the ground. I don't understand. The Gemara says that we take lead from its original source. It's actually very hot. So lead from the original source is actually hot enough to kill a person, but that's where the Torah says esh. It's not esh, it's lead. But esh, be'esh tisaref. So esh is also, metal is also considered. No, we're going on the word tisaref. So we're actually using the word tisaref from Bnei Aaron. You got to put it with lead because it's the best penalty. What do we use the word esh for? That you can't use raw lead without being heated up. Why is lead hot when you can't take it out of the ground?
The phrase in the fire teaches that lead must be heated by fire. Lead that is taken from the ground is in a naturally molten state may not be used.
I guess you have like molten, like if you go deep enough in the ground, I guess it's hot enough and the lead will actually be molten state, it's like liquid, and you can kill a person. No, we don't want that. We want the cold lead that you heat up, that's what we use. The Gemara says, Amar Rav Yirmiyah, last few lines, the Rav Zera. Okay, so now when the Torah says ba'esh tisaref, it's not only fire, it's anything else, even lead. Is that true that anytime it's written ba'esh tisaref, you can use something which is not actual physical fire? Veha gabe parim anisrafim. You know we have the paraduma. The paraduma we need to burn it. It's called parim anisrafim. How do you burn it? Dichti ba'esh. It says over there, burn it on wood in fire. So the Betanya be'esh v'lo b'sidroter v'lo gevasindroter. You can't burn it with lime. You got to burn it with actual fire. So here you see the word saref, and you have the word esh, and you're not allowed to use anything except fire. So why when it says tisaref be'esh, you can use anything except fire? The Gemara says, atam kiti ba'esh v'adal tisaref. By us, it's written ba'esh tisaref. If you wanted only fire, write esh and don't write anything else. Therefore, lerabot kol srefot habaot. Since the word tisaref is at the end, we can use anything. However, mechamad esh, acha ketiv v'saravato al etzim ba'esh. When it says saravato al etzim, you might have said saraf is anything. Saravato al esh, saravato al etzim. You could use anything, even lime and even metal, even whatever you want. That's what it says ba'esh. The sof. Ba'esh desof, esh lemeimra de esh in midyachina lo. So therefore, if the word fire comes at the end, it's telling you only fire. If the word fire comes first, then you have tisaref, you can add. But if the word says burn in fire, then it doesn't add. Bevuchim to you.